welcome everyone to the Speaker Showcase featuring Chris Thompson. I'm John Lurquin, Marketing and Communications Director at Toastmasters International. It is my pleasure to moderate today's live Q&A session. To ask Chris a question, please click the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Type in your question and hit send. We will do our best to get to as many questions as possible. It is my pleasure to introduce Chris Thompson. Chris has been a content creator since the birth of YouTube, with hundreds of millions of views across multiple platforms. He continues to create discussion and spread his message of authenticity. Chris's education session titled Influencer is a Verb is available to watch on demand, and we are honored he is joining us live today. Please welcome Chris Thompson.
Hi, everybody.
And if we were live, the crowd would be going crazy right now.
The crowd is going wild.
Thank you, Chris, for joining us today.
Thank you
we already have some questions ready, so let's get started. Here's a good one. To kick things off, where do you find inspiration for your content?
In everyday life, I think when it comes to making good content, the main thing that people are looking for is connection. They want to relate to whatever it is that you're speaking on. When you go out into the world, there's a lot of things that we think about that we don't express. And I'll find a moment out in the world and turn it into some form of content. It's really good to get out of your current environment so that you can get inspired. Like I went camping last week. So much content came from that, and then so much rest and inspiration. And I think that's one of the big things that people forget is the aspect of taking care of your mind so it's fresh so you can create great content. But ultimately, you want to think, is this a common human experience, and how can I express that in content form?
Thank you. If you can think back to when you started, and you still seem very young, so it's probably not that long ago. To think back to when you started, what is something that you wish you knew at that time?
I don't really agree with those types of statements, if I'm honest. The whole journey of failing and learning from that failure and continuing to push forward is part of the process. I would say there's only probably one thing that if I had a regret, it would be this, that when Google bought YouTube and introduced a partner program, that I really saw the potential in it. I remember there was a really well-known, he's well-known now, named Phil DeFranco, does news stuff. And I remember when they introduced a partner program, you could make money. He was like, I'm going to be the first YouTuber to make $100,000 in a year. And I told him, no, there's no way you're going to make $100,000 in a year. And now there's YouTube Millionaire, possibly in the several millions of dollars. You can generate that kind of revenue. I just wish I had had more of the vision for that, but I think I had to go learn some other lessons before I got to that point.
YouTube, technology, the internet, I think back when YouTube first began, I remember thinking to myself, what is this thing? Okay, it's a way to watch videos, to watch funny videos, but it's so much more now.
Yeah.
And before we jumped on this call, you were sharing with me a little bit about your experience beginning with YouTube, and we were talking about that platform a bit. How do you balance your public life and your personal life?
That's one of the hardest things, and that's what causes a lot of creators to burn out. Is I have my phone. I could always be doing something. I could always be building my brand. I could always be capturing that moment, taking a picture, filming a video. Everything in life can be content. You just have to listen to your body. I don't work for anybody but myself, but I live my life really regimented. I get up at 5:30 in the morning every morning, even though I don't have to, because that 5:30 till about 7, no one's emailing me. I have my phone on airplane mode because I need to put my armor on for the day. So you listen to your body, and if you're feeling burnt out, you try to take a step back, but it's hard because there's that constant pressure. If I don't put out content, will I ever be relevant? But prioritizing yourself and your own well-being, and understanding that this is a marathon, not a sprint. If you want to have longevity, you have to be in a one piece. So you try and capture moments. And when I capture a moment, I then put my phone away. That's all I'm doing. And now I'm going to focus on the person in front of me, because those interpersonal relationships are also what's inspiring. There's several people who became huge creating content surrounding their family life. And if you're constantly looking at your phone and not interacting, that inspiration doesn't come.
But it sounds like that you also have to be explicit and scheduled with that. It sounds very intentional that you're going to use your phone for certain reasons, and then otherwise you're putting it away so that it doesn't distract you.
Yeah, you still want to have a regular personal life. So there's a lot of people who struggle with that, and that's just the lesson that everybody learns eventually. I also struggle with that, and you just start to really understand the importance of that face-to-face time and the actual interactions with people in front of you, and you find that balance and you communicate with your loved ones about that.
Here's a question that relates to our discussion. The negativity, being in the spotlight, it must not always be positive vibes being sent your way. How do you deal with the occasional, I hope it's occasional, negativity?
It's daily. It's daily since I started, especially with me talking about important subjects, especially now. Things are super polarizing. You really can't say much without offending people. But that realization that you can't say much without offending people is actually liberating instead of shuts me down. If I can't please everybody ever, I might as well just stick with my authentic voice and how I feel about things. And then the biggest lesson, especially recently, is I can't engage with how somebody feels. I mean, I can, but ultimately there's no right or wrong with feeling. It just is. So I listen to them. If they're angry at me, a lot of times I'll show compassion. I had a girl send me a very angry DM yesterday, and I could have defended myself, but I didn't, because I know who I am. Instead, I reached out to her and said, "Are you okay?" And it actually kicked off a conversation where she confided in me some things. It was really interesting how it turned around. So I think just understanding who you are and not engaging with people's emotions too much can really help you survive the landscape. But you have to have a thick skin, for sure.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's probably easier some days than others.
Right. That kind of goes in with taking a break. Take a break.
Right.
If you're feeling angry, do not engage. Just take a step back and heal whatever is hurting you at that moment.
That's smart. You used the word influencer. Can you explain to our audience what that means, what that word means to you, and what it takes to be an influencer? How much time during the day do you spend dedicated to that?
Yeah, I mean, influencer is more of a recent term. There was no YouTuber is what I was called for a while, but influencer seems to be the more common thing, and that's kind of what my whole speech was about. Was everybody is an influencer, and I think we focus on the numbers a little bit too much. And it's how you use that influence that makes you an influencer. But I mean, again, you could work every moment of every day. And for me at this point, I'm probably working anywhere between 9 and 12-hour days every day.
Wow.
Even on today is my day off, So it's like but that's because I'm really building what it is that I'm trying to do. And you have to dedicate yourself. So you could work as much or as little as you want, but ultimately you're in control over the success of your brand. So if you're going to take a step back, then you're going to be less successful. And it's a constantly evolving industry, and people will pass by you. Just focus on what it is that you do and where you want to go. Be very clear about why it is that you're doing, and be efficient with your time. But it is a grind. I don't think people really understand how much work it takes, because you only see the content. You don't see everything that leads up to that content.
Right. But how much time do you spend creating one video, for example? This is a question from Sabine Schmelzer.
It depends on the content. Like I don't do YouTube much anymore. I actually focus on TikTok, surprisingly enough. So the threshold for TikTok is much lower when it comes to editing. But when I was doing YouTube videos, when I was doing music videos, I mean, between recording and producing and shooting and editing, it could take a week. The editing process could take several days. Just depends on the intensity of the project.
And that is not something I mean, now in the position I'm in, and over the last few years, I've been more engaged in video production. And so I'm more aware of that, but you don't get that when you see a little snippet of what someone produces.
And you don't want to put that on the audience. You just want them to sit back and enjoy the work, you know?
Right. You've published a lot of content. What piece of content are you most proud of, and why?
It's really interesting. It's a video that got no views, but it made me really happy. It was a video where I sat across from my mother, and then I made a second video where I sat across from my father, and I thanked them and expressed my gratitude for everything that they provided for me in order for me to have the success that I'm having now. If I didn't have that safety net of knowing that no matter how hard I failed, my parents would be there for me, I don't know that we would be having this conversation right now. So taking that moment to really let them know that they're the reason that I was able to flourish. Those are two very important videos. And then there was one other video that I talk about in my speech that saved someone's life. He heard a message that I put out there in a moment before he decided that it was over for him, and it changed his mind, and now he flourishes. So probably those pieces of content are ones that I'll cherish forever.
Are those videos accessible on your channel? I bet by the end of today, they'll have a few more views.
Content. I don't know how to make it more available for people. Maybe I'll like post it on Twitter. I don't know. I made a video every single day for 6 years. So there's a lot of content out there.
Here's a question from Ashley Westbrook. Had you not decided to be an influencer and work on YouTube and other public forums, what would you be? And how would you see yourself achieving that goal?
That's so hard. I've done this for 10 years. I thought about this yesterday. Like, what would I do?
A veterinarian? No.
I would just end up with all of the dogs if I was a vet. I'll probably do something working with young people. I worked with Big Brother, Big Sister for a while and did some mentorship, and that was wonderful. I think because of the upbringing that I had, and the fact that I had such a stable environment, I know a lot of kids out there don't have that right now. Being able to help, and that's kind of what my speech was about again, being able to shape the viewpoints of the young people as they go into this world that's really hard to parent. It's very difficult to parent kids that are online when you don't have experience with all that technology. And because I come from this world, but am a full-grown adult, working with these kids and helping them navigate and also helping their parents understand their world and meet in the middle, I'd probably do something working with kids, just something to be of service. That's the most important thing to me.
Yeah. Here's a question from Hallie Warren. As the world becomes seemingly more and more divisive, and I have a feeling that perhaps the COVID-19 pandemic exacerbates this, with more of us working from home and we're online, and there's a lot of benefit and more connections by being online. But at the same time, it's easy to focus on a lot of the negativity. How do you stay so positive?
It's hard. I think I'm just honest about it. Some days I'm not positive. I get a lot of people ask me that when I post content in the mornings where I just walk and talk and try and inspire people and change mindsets. And I think it's just, you say there's a lot of positive and there's a lot of negative. Where do you choose to focus? What you see is what you will receive. If you choose to look and engage with the negative, which trust me, there could be 1,000 comments. I'll have one negative one, and the human brain is weird like that. It'll just focus on that negative thing. But if you take a step back, take a deep breath and focus and develop those positive relationships that you have, not only with other people, but the relationship you have with yourself. That's one of the biggest struggles is we're so hard on ourselves. And I do this as well, that we get to a point where we can't hear anything but negativity because it's in our brain. So start here, start loving yourself in your imperfections. None of us are perfect. Start sharing those imperfections and connect with people. And I think once you start to really develop that loving relationship with yourself, you set the foundation for positivity everywhere, but it's just where you decide to focus your energy.
Does it ever become too much where it impacts your desire to connect with others?
Yes. And that's when you go camping for a week, or you hop on FaceTime with your mom, or you do the self-care things. I meditate, I read, do all those things that everybody knows that we can do in order to feel better and feel stronger. And you will get there. It just takes the effort. There's a reason a lot of people do it.
Yep. Here's a question about creating content versus streaming live. Why would you choose one over the other? What's the value of one over the other? Is one more important?
They're very different worlds, because I started on YouTube and now my full-time job is mostly live streaming. I think that content creation in edited video has a greater net, has a greater ability to go viral and connect with more people, because you don't have to be there while it's happening in order to engage with it. But with live streaming, it creates a depth of connection, because it's not, I put out content, you leave a comment, I might respond to that comment, and this will be a several day process. It's actual back and forth, and it really trains you. That's why when I competed doing table topics, I was good at it, because I'm used to that immediate interaction. It's two different skill sets, and both are equally important. One is good for reaching people, one is good for connecting. The YouTube content will have further reach, but this live streaming content will create a community in that core that you need to launch no matter what platform you go to.
That makes sense. All right, I love this question from Karen Webb. If you could interview anyone on your live stream, who would it be and why?
Oh, good question. Oprah, because she is the consummate interviewer, and as a Chicagoan originally, you grew up, Oprah was a religion. So just being in her presence and learning from her as someone who likes to interview people and likes to learn about people, and then maybe I get a free car out of it. I don't know, but I think she would be really interesting to learn from and interact with.
That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Before we open the webinar, you and I were chatting about how you started with 0 views, zero subscribers. How long did it take for you to get to the first 1,000 subscribers? And what was that experience like?
It was weird. Well, because back when I started, 10,000 subscribers got you in the top 100 most subscribed channels of all time. I think now it's got to be in the range of 10 to 20 million. So back then it was a little bit of a different game, but I created 50 videos and I got to 500 subscribers after 50 videos. I was proud of that. I had no idea what YouTube was going to become. And then I told a story about someone using my YouTube videos to seduce this girl in Europe. And he wasn't smart enough to rip the video, so he embedded it. So it came back to my social media, and that's how I found out about it. I told that story, and they put it on the front page of YouTube. And back then, everyone had the same front page of YouTube, and I went from 500 to 5,000. And that was the moment I was hooked. I don't know what this is, but I really enjoy bringing people together. So that was the first moment, but it's never one moment that creates a career for sure.
What do you do when the audience appears to not like your content, or they're giving you feedback? Do you adjust your content, or however you publish it, that's what it is, and you'll create something from scratch the next go around?
You can't let your audience dictate your content, because then you'll always be beholden to their opinions. I always want to listen to them, but listen to the people who actually care about you. You're going to have most of the people aren't going to be a part of that core. So you try to listen to the people who engage with your content every day, see what they like, but ultimately you have to love what you do every day. If you don't, you'll immediately get burnt out, and people will see you're burnt out and they're like, well, I don't want to watch this stressed out person. I'm stressed out. So it's important for you to listen, but do not make your content specifically because of them. Make it for you and adjust it to what they like, but has to be authentic to you.
Sure. Here's a question from Rachel related to that. How do you decide on your content? How do you structure the content, and how do you identify, or who is your target audience? Do you specifically target a certain audience depending on a message, or does that just happen naturally?
It will happen naturally. With TikTok, I saw that there was and that's really what any business is about. It's about filling a gap for people. And when people were thinking about TikTok, they were like, it's only for kids doing dances and lip syncs. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But my mind didn't think that. My mind thought, well, I watch TikTok. And if you're talking about TikTok, you watch TikTok and we're the same age. Well, I need to fill that void. So I started creating content for people my age, and I grew 600,000 in less than a year. And it's because instead of saying, and the same thing with Twitch, I live stream on Twitch, and it was only for gaming, but I wanted to do my podcast. And instead of going to YouTube, which was oversaturated, and looking at Twitch, instead of saying that's just for gaming, I said, this website needs my type of content, and they don't have it yet. And that is what has brought me to success, is instead of following trends, I set them. So if you find that you're enjoying a certain type of content and there's not enough of it, you can provide it and become that content creator.
That's really interesting. I mean, these new platforms come around, and even YouTube redefines itself over recent history. And when you come across a platform and see what it eventually becomes, I have this feeling in my mind of like, why didn't I think of that? Or how did it become this?
Yeah.
How do you maintain that creativity to think outside the box?
You're going to miss the mark sometimes. There's so many things where I was really resistant, and then it took off and I was like, you're going to miss sometimes. It's kind of like investing in the stock market. You know, you're going to hit sometimes, but most of the time you're going to miss it. So I think it's just a matter of, am I inspired by what I'm seeing? Is there a way for me to hop on this trend early, but make it authentic to who I am? And sometimes the answer is no. Sometimes you just got to celebrate the victories of others and get them on the next one.
Where do you think YouTube will be 10 years from now?
Oh, I don't know.
In outer space somewhere, obviously.
Yeah, you think about, I remember back in the MySpace days, MySpace was the website. And now no one talks about MySpace, but no one could imagine a world where MySpace didn't exist. And I think YouTube is much, much more ingrained. The reason YouTube will survive is because Google is the #1 search engine in the world. YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world. So it's gone way past social and more so into the everyday function of life. I think the time of the creator, where the creator is waning. I think YouTube has made a lot of moves to kind of show that they're more focused on big brands, which they have to keep the lights on. You do what you got to do. And that's why I always encourage people, have your own platform, because you are the one that cares about you. The website cares about the website. And there's been several times where they shifted in a different direction and I'm irrelevant, but it doesn't have anything to do with my content. They just moved in a different direction.
you were explaining to us what the experience was like gaining your first 1,000 subscribers. If you were to start today, how would that be different from when you started?
When I started, I needed validation. I wanted attention. I said some things that were problematic. I was there to be served, and now I am there to serve. I want to make sure and enrich the world around me. And that's probably the advice that I would give to younger creator self is you don't need the validation of other people to know who you are. And if you want to have success, make sure you're providing value to the people who encounter your content. So if I started now, I would immediately go into more of a service role than an attention role, which I don't blame people for getting involved for those reasons. I did it. But if you want longevity, you have to provide value for the people who watch you. Otherwise, it's just, look at me. And I'm just not in that stage of my life anymore.
Sure. Wow, this time went really quick. You and I knew that it was going to.
Yep.
This will be our final question.
Okay.
How does it feel knowing you impact actual human lives on a daily basis?
It brings me to tears. I get mail from people, I get emails and DMs, and the idea that me expressing myself could save someone's life still blows my mind. I've watched relationships flourish from people who met in the world that I created. I'm singing at a wedding in November for two people that met in my chat. The idea that I created this world and that people are finding each other in a time where we're kind of isolated, it's the most wonderful thing. And I count myself lucky every single day that I get to just sit back and watch it happen. Whenever I do meetups in person, I haven't done one in a while because of COVID, but one of my favorite parts, in the beginning, everyone knows me, but no one knows each other. By the end, nobody's talking to me and everybody's talking to each other. And I just sit back and watch, and it's like, proud dad. I love it. So the fact that I can bring people together who are like-minded, that want to support each other and create a chosen family rather than the one that they were born into, it's there's no real words that can describe how wonderful that is.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah.
I'm grateful for having gotten to know you in this little bit of time, and I know our audience really appreciates you taking the time.
Yeah, thank you. This is so much fun. I'm really grateful for this opportunity.
Well, everyone have a wonderful rest of your morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you're joining us from. And I know we'll be hearing from Chris again soon.
Yep.
Thank you.